we have a few things over here that I want to show you. It's a, I think these are, to my opinion, the most exciting instruments that Korg makes right now. What makes them the most exciting is the fact that they are very configurable by you. So instead of telling you, oh, I'm an analog synth, or I'm an FM synth, or I'm a wavetable synth, or whatever, these machines, in slightly different ways, allow you to become, bless you, allow you to become what you want them to become. So welcome. And we will start with the most fresh one, the Drumlogue, then move on to the Minilogue XD and the opsix. So what's exciting about the, let's say, the Drumlogue and the Minilogue XD? I want to give you an introduction to the whole platform that Korg has built with the instruments. So a lot of people still don't know much about these. Let's say I will spend a few minutes to educate you a little bit. So what's really amazing about the Minilogue XD, for instance? So on the surface, it's an analog instrument. So it has 4 polyphonic voices. Each voice consists of 2 analog oscillators and an analog filter. But also there's a third oscillator. What's special about it is that you can load your own oscillator models, which are called plugins, basically. These are not really like the plugins that you know on Mac or Windows or iOS, but they are plugins nonetheless. They are miniature pieces of code, essentially. So they're not like samples or wavetables. They can run their own mathematics, essentially DSP algorithms that generate whatever sound you want. And that's integrated into the main structure of the instrument. So you have 3 oscillators. One of them is digital. It's a very, very flexible platform. In addition to that, there's a plugin system in the effects section as well. So we have modulation effects, delay effects, and reverb effects. And in all of these 3 sections, you can have plugins. So again, these are algorithms that a certain developer created. And overall, what's really amazing is you have a total of 48 locations here for your own plugins. This is kind of what I've been saying for years. This is a way to customize your instrument. So everyone has their own tastes in sound, and you can choose exactly the oscillators you want, exactly the effects that you want, and basically every Minilogue XD on the planet can be individual. You choose what you have in there. And in pretty much all other instruments on the market, the manufacturer chooses that for you. So you buy an instrument, it might have a lot of different oscillator models, filter models, effects, and so on. But they're still the same in every device. So all of the buyers of these instruments get the exact same instrument. So that's a very exciting thing about these devices. So once again, up to 48 plugins can be installed on the Minilogue XD, as well as its related products, the NTS1, which is a monophonic mini synthesizer, but still has the same, it runs the same plugins as the Minilogue XD, as well as the now discontinued but quite legendary Prologue, which is a bigger 8 or 16 voice synthesizer. And now we move to the Drumlogue, which is the 2nd generation of the plugin platform. It's slightly different to the previous platform. It has plugins in the effects as well, master effects, delay effects, and a reverb. But the synth engine in here is now not just an oscillator model, it's a full instrument. So you can actually play it via MIDI as a separate instrument. So it kind of becomes like a little module, if you will. And a very exciting thing is that we actually have, at Sinevibes, we have 24 plugin products at the moment for the Minilogue XD. So that's already half of what you can install into the device. And there are probably around 100 or even more plugins, so we cannot install all of them at the same time on the same unit. On the Drumlogue, you are not limited to how many plugins you can install. It's only there's a built-in 32 megabytes memory in here, and the plugins are actually very small in size, usually like 20, 25, 30 kilobytes. So technically, it should be hundreds, if not thousands, of plugins. It will probably be very difficult to scroll through all of them, but nevertheless, there's a lot of stuff that's possible. So once again, here on this unit, on the Minilogue XD and the NTS one, we have an oscillator that can go additionally go into a filter and envelope generator. It can be modulated by the LFO or the envelope generator. On the Drumlogue, the synth voice is self-contained, so nothing in the unit touches it. It's a full engine on its own. And so if we speak about the Drumlogue in more detail now, it ships with a Sinevibes plugin called Nano for free, so it comes with the device. No strings attached. It's a proper voice. There are nothing to. I mean, it's included with the unit. You get it at no cost. And we've actually released an update for it with the previous firmware. And there's another update coming soon. And let me just show you what it is. So many people are, obviously the Drumlogue is first and foremost a drum machine. But you can, I mean, there's a synth in here. And I'm pretty sure some amazing things will be happening in the future. So we can expect, very basic rhythms out of it, of course. This is using some custom samples that I've uploaded here. But now we have a bass part. And that bass part is coming from the Nano synth, which is it's a dual oscillator monophonic engine, and it has multiple filter types, multiple waveforms that you can blend. And we're kind of exploring it right now. High-pass filter, bandpass filter, and if somebody knows this device and has it, there will soon be more stuff in here. There will be a new Nano version which has other filter types. So this other preset is already using that new Nano version of the Nano plugin, and it has let's get back to the structure. So it's a virtual analog synth, 2 oscillators, a multimode filter, envelope generator, and LFO to modulate the filter on pitch, and it has built-in distortion. And in the initial version, there was just one fixed distortion type. In the update, there will be 5 different distortion types. And we can check them out. That's the dry sound that we can expect, but we can now adjust the gain. that's the most ridiculous one. So it can sound pretty smooth, but pretty wild as well, if you want to. Generally speaking, Nano is a very capable synthesizer. I wouldn't say that. Actually, I would say that it's actually becoming one of the highlights of the instrument. Although it's kind of by default, if you're not familiar with this device, it's kind of hidden. You have to enable the user mode for the oscillator for the synth engine, and then you have to choose Nano because it's not like it's treated like a plugin that's included with the system essentially. Actually, we can go through a few patterns, demo patterns that I've created specifically to show you, so you can kind of hear the variety of different flavors of sounds that you can get with it. So yeah, it can do different things, and I think it's a wonderful engine overall. It fits the character of the instruments really well, once again, it comes standard with the unit. In addition to, you have your 4 analog tracks, 6 sample tracks, and then a synth track. Even though Korg does insist that it's just a hybrid drum machine, I think eventually with Nano and with other synth engines that are coming, it will still be used like a groove box anyway. Yeah, and one of the things that I wanted to show you here is another engine that's coming for it from Sinevibes. It will be a paid one. So Nano, once again, is included for free with the device itself. There's another one that we're calling Femto that's going to be available in a few weeks, I hope. And it's a similar concept to Nano in the sense that it's a monophonic engine with several oscillators and a filter. But this time, it's different. It has different oscillator models and a different saturation model in the end. So I would say it's kind of it's drawing inspiration from mono synths like the Roland SH101 or Dreadbox Hades. So it's kind of like a single oscillator locked to a sub oscillator, and it's the oscillators will have a variable shape, which can also be modulated. So it sounds pretty, actually, kind of more beefy than Nano. Yeah, and one cool thing, but it will have a very simple interface. Speaking of the interface, one interesting upgrade that we received with this new generation, on the previous generation of instruments, like the Minilogue XD, which is, I'm saying previous generation, but they're still available on sale. And we still have new plugins coming for it. So it doesn't mean that it's not going to be sold by Korg. It's still manufactured like the NTS1, same thing. But we used to have only 8 parameters for the oscillator engine over here. In the Drumlogue, we have 24 parameters. So there's way more that you can do with the synthesizer now, which is really great. Yeah, so it's a very, very fun instrument, and once again, it has. I think the sequencer over here is really excellent. It has very cool features like it has variable probability on every step. It has playback alterations on every step at the same time as the probability. Alterations mean that you can set a step to play once in 2 bars, or on the 3rd bar out of 4, or 2 times out of 3. There's a lot of stuff in here, and it's actually a very cool way to. Let's actually do a quick pattern over here, and I will show you a few tricks over here that I use to program it. So we can start in step mode. Just a sec, sorry. So we'll start with the kick drum, and then we will add a snare. It's a 1-bar pattern at this point, but we can say we want this snare. Again, in step mode, we hold the step button and we say we only want it to play, let's say, 60%, with a 60% probability. It does. For some reason, it's not really playing. Why is it? Just a sec. Let's say this step. So now it's playing sometimes, but one cool trick that I use for a lazy hi-hat pattern, I can press part and time to set the timing settings of one track. So I set it to just one step. And if we now enable that step, that's the hi-hat playing one step all the time. But now we go and set the probability to, let's say, 40%. So just 3 buttons and it's playing a random pattern. Yeah, that's a very, very quick trick. And we can expand or shrink the sequence very easily. So we just shift and right or shift and left. So it duplicates the bar to 2, 3, or 4 bars. So it's a very quick way to do things. And another thing that I really like about this one is that there's a groove mode over here, which is adding both swing and level accents, which is a very, very quick way to introduce, groove. So yeah, once again, it's really cool to have this on both. Not just affect the time, but do these accents on the level. Another pattern that I was showing, I just forgot. Yeah, this one. It's actually very cool. Most of the patterns that I was showing is actually using motion sequencing. We use motion sequencing to create melodies, but also we can use them to automate any parameters. So in case of Nano, you can automate waveform types, filter cutoff, even filter type, envelope time, whatever. But one interesting thing, when the motion sequencing is working together with variable trigger probability, we end up having a very interesting effect here. You can hear these slides, right? They are actually not programmed into the instrument, so there is no like legato steps over here. What is happening is that the motion sequencing is running all the time, but the probability on all of the triggers is 50%. So some of them are playing, some of them are not. But when they are not playing, the motion sequence still changes the note. So you hear the glide. Again, I think it's very, very fun to do it this way. Very cool, very nice combination of, let's say, kind of like an interaction of the sequencer and the sound engine, which I think is really working really well. So, and there's actually one other trick that I want to show you on the Minilogue XD. What's interesting about it is that the instrument has an audio input. I haven't set this up. I hope I'm not messing things up. Output number 3. So there are 4 outputs on this device. You can send the individual instruments from here to outboard processors. So if you want, let's say, what do we have? Let's say we want this clap to go through output number 3. So we go to the global settings. Output number 3 is going to be the clap. And now we mute it so that... Just a second, sorry. Was it? Yeah, the clap no longer sounds. And we can enable the audio input to actually, so we send the clap through the NTS1. I hope I set this up correctly now. And we, actually, I think, I'm sorry, I sent the hi-hat. Anyway, it's even better actually, because now what we have is the hi-hat doesn't make a sound within the unit itself, but it goes into the output. It goes into the NTS1, which is running one of our plugins, a flanger, and it can also add a reverb. And it's going back into the unit, so there's no mixing, no separate gear. And since you have up to 4 outputs, you can send up to 4 different tracks out of the unit and actually back into it. You don't need anything else. Especially one thing I wanted to show you. So it's a very cool way to spice things up. If you do use multiple outputs, you obviously need to mix them back. So we do need the mixer, but one mixer that I wanted to show you is this tiny one. Maybe somebody knows about it. It's called mixer or mixer, actually, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's a small passive mixer, so it doesn't need power. You can send up to four mini jacks into it. Actually, is it 5? I believe 5 even. So 5 channels, mix them passively and back into the unit. So basically, you can use the Drumlogue with an NTS1 or 2 of these, plus 2 guitar pedals, and mix them back into the unit. So it's kind of like it becomes a little modular setup. But again, the core becomes one thing. It's just the Drumlogue. So yeah, it's a very, very cool thing to have here. Because you can send any part through multiple effects, which is really incredible. Yeah, that's the Drumlogue, and we can now actually do a quick pause where you can ask me questions about the Drumlogue. Any questions, and I will ask them. Then we switch over to the other instrument. Can I get it for free? Okay, maybe we'll have some other ideas later on. We'll be happy to answer any questions. So now we go back to the Minilogue XD, which I was talking about, and something that immediately you will notice. Why is it sounding like a drum machine? It's not this one. Yeah, really, why? Okay, so quick answer. It's, I would say, the extreme use case of the plugin engine over here. So it's our product, a product by Sinevibes that's called Groove, which is it's a preset-based oscillator. So it has a synth engine that configures itself in real time, depending on which keyboard zone you play, and it has 7 different zones, and you can set what kind of sound you want on each zone. So it has a bunch of presets, almost 100 of them, which are split into bass, a kick drum, a snare, toms, hi-hats, and a percussion sound. And when you use those together, it becomes like a little groove box. And you get to choose every sound. So they are very. So you just switch through the presets, and it defines what oscillators are sounding. Is it an FM engine or a subtractive engine? There's distortion built in, so it's configured a lot of things. So we kind of changed the bass now. Now we can. Sometimes it just sounds a bit cheesy, sometimes too harsh, or like, I would say in a good way, because it's very fun to play with. And the interesting thing, like I said, the oscillator is part of the big synth engine of. We can close the filter to match the dark atmosphere. So, yeah, you can send it through the analog filter and modulate it with the envelope. And suddenly it's not cheesy anymore. Or is it? You decide. So yeah, once again, it's the extreme use case of this instrument, and to explore it a bit more from the point of the available user oscillators, I will show you a few, and we will actually be creating some sounds from scratch right now. And like I said, this particular engine has existed for almost 5 years, actually. 5 years ago, Korg released the Prologue. Then it was the NTS1 4 years ago, and 3.5 years ago it was the Minilogue XD. Later on, the Minilogue XD desktop. So obviously, a lot of people have created a lot of different oscillator models for this one, and I will show you some of them right now. So we start with a basic sound. We turn down the analog oscillators and turn up the plug-in based oscillator. And with the type knob, we can choose which one we want to use. So one of the highlights is an oscillator that's called JP Boo, which kind of looks like JP1000. You probably know this legendary instrument. So it's a very authentic model of the JP1000 super saw waveform, created by a brand called Edouard Digital from France, and it's available for purchase for this instrument. I think it's really incredible because it's a very good recreation of this legendary waveform. And having 7 oscillators on a single note, and it's still 4-voice polyphonic. And now we can use the filter. Again, it's a digital. It's a recreation of a digital oscillator now going into an analog filter. And we can add the tape delay to this one. Which is one of my favorites on the unit. So it's a very nice addition to the unit. I think this oscillator is definitely a must-have. One other oscillator that I quite like is called Hovig, and it's also a model of a very well-known oscillator. From Alpha Juno, which does these classic Hoover sounds, and it's a very cool. Just a sec. It's so close. I think it's. I don't remember the maker of it. I think it's called Buchao. I think it's a developer from Japan, if I'm not mistaken. But please excuse me if I am mistaken. There is actually a very large repository of available plugins on Korg's GitHub page. So it lists all of the oscillators which are available and links to them. Some of them are available for free. I will show some of them to you in a moment. But this one I think is also incredible, especially if you put the synth in unison mode. And you apply the pitch onto the oscillator. I'm sorry if it's too loud, but it's a great sound. honestly speaking, 4 years ago, I myself wouldn't even expect to hear this kind of sound of this instrument. So normally, actually there is, I don't think I know any hardware that models it at all. There are a few software plugins like Redominator that have the classic Hoover sound in it, but it's it's a computer plugin. And this one, I think Hovig was like, it was very cheap. It was very inexpensive, so it's like a no-brainer for this unit as well. Another plugin that's very cool is recreating waveforms from Korg DW8000, which is also a very classic instrument. And this one is made by Tim Shoebridge. You get to select two waveforms, and you can blend with them. So actually, some of the this one is actually very cool. So we set. I will show you my favorite trick with this oscillator. So there are two waveforms that is generating at the same time. Just a sec. I want them to play a fifth, but the shape knob is now controlling the blend between the two waveforms. And now if we use the LFO, once again, in the Drumlogue, the synth engine is self-contained, so there are no modulation sources apart from the motion sequencing that you can send into it. On the Minilogue XD NTS1, the Prologue, the oscillator is part of the main big synth engine, so the synthesizer's LFO and envelope can modulate it. So we use the LFO it begs to add an ensemble effect. And the delay. I think it's really incredible, and with every different plugin, this instrument is becoming, something else. And again, please, I would accentuate on this one. You choose what oscillator models are on the synthesizer, nobody else. So you pick this one, you try them out, and you kind of build your dream instrument, not in the perfect way. I think a dream instrument is impossible. Everybody is always complaining about something. But this is just incredible, and if not, it's just a lot of fun. So now I highly recommend this one as well. Another actually package of oscillators is available. These are ports of the open source oscillators from Mutable Instruments. I don't remember how many oscillators were ported. I believe at least 8. So, and those are free. And these make really, really amazing sounds. One of them is, one of my favorites is the additive oscillator. And again, we can modulate the shape. There are two controls for the shape. And let's say we'll layer it with the analog oscillator. I'm not even using the filter, I'm just blending in two analog VCOs. It's just, how much time did it take? What, 30 seconds? Just on. So it's pretty incredible, actually, I think. And so, again, these are oscillators from other third-party developers. These are my personal highlights. I really love them. So, yeah, I've shown you the Groove oscillator. That's kind of this hybrid drum machine-based synth. I think it's the most, kind of the most ridiculous one that we did, because it's not really, it's just fun. I can tell you that. Yeah. Yeah, and obviously Groove is not the only oscillator that we have at Sinevibes. We have other ones which are really, really great. One of them is actually a complete 4-operator FM synth. It's called Node. And it's not too dissimilar to something like a Yamaha DX100, actually, just in a very compact version. Compact in the sense that it doesn't have a lot of parameters, but we did squeeze in control for operator ratios, algorithms. We actually have more. I think the DX100 has 8 algorithms. We have 12. We have feedback on one of the oscillators. We have variable ratios, and we have a modulation generator that can be an envelope or an LFO or a random, like a sample and hold waveform. And it actually sounds very, very seriously like a classic FM synth. I mean, I'm showing you the very, let's say, very classic, even cliche. And right now, what you're hearing is actually not using anything from the synth engine of the units. So nothing is used. It's just the Node engine. But you know, it does the classic stuff. But because it has, let's say, a fresh approach to dealing with anti-aliasing, so it's 2 times oversampled. It's the synthesizer itself. Runs the plugins at 48 kilohertz sample rate. We run it at 96, double the sample rate. And it has a very kind of rounded, less cold sound than traditional FM engines. And some sounds are pretty, you know, kind of, I would say, rubbery. And because we have very cool modulation generators, they can kind of sweep the FM modulation depth in very it's kind of like more like a different way to interact to how you play, which is very fun. Of course, there's like a FM organ as well. And of course, we also have that bass sound. Kind of very similar to the lately bass or solid bass sound that's been used thousands or millions of times. So that's Node. So it's a very flexible engine. After Node, we actually kind of went crazy. We released another plugin that's called Odds. The interesting part about Odds, it's not really focused on, although it has, if I remember correctly, okay, it's my product, I'm supposed to remember, 7 different synth engines. It has 2-operator FM, virtual analog, phase distortion, cross modulation, ring modulation, and a few others which I don't remember. But I promise they're there. There are 80 sound engine configurations, so it's kind of a fixed, you have a fixed choice of different combinations of waveforms, filter types, and so on. But this synth is not as much about these particular oscillators, it's more about how to interact with them. So it has 5 ways to randomize the engine in real time. So it has trigger probability, it has variable pitch shift, it's almost like variable transposition of pitch. So each time you press a key, it can shift an octave up, an octave down, or both, or by a fifth, and so on. So it's kind of like random octave setting on an arpeggiator. And it also has randomization for modulator speed. And for instance, one of the main parameters like FM depth or cutoff frequency of the filter. So, and it actually sounds I will just show you a few presets so you understand. So now, basically, I'm pressing the same key. But it's playing a different note because there is a setting for variable transposition. And with a single chord, it kind of makes things way more exciting if you're only playing a few notes, especially if you cannot really play like a crazy keyboard player. I don't think some of these things are just impossible. Actually, you would have to have 20 fingers. Okay, and this one is very interesting because it uses transposition in addition to variable trigger probability. And the cool thing about the trigger probability is it's assigned to the knob over here on the unit. And if we have, it uses, this particular preset uses the arpeggiator, which is latched. But you cannot hear anything because I've turned the probability to 0. And now I'm starting to increase the trigger probability. Yeah, it's also kind of an extreme use case of this engine, and once again, it's not just about the. This is an FM engine, for instance, also kind of using the similar concept. Oh, this is very fun because it randomizes not just the pitch on every key, but it also randomizes the main parameters as well as the modulator type. So So sometimes it's an envelope, sometimes it's an LFO, and it can be a different shape. And it's per note. So every note will be different. So it's not like you press the keys and it's the same thing. Because we have it's 4 voice, so we have 4 instances of the plugin, and each of them has its own randomization happening. Try that with your modular system. How many thousands of dollars is it going to cost? And can you save presets? No. Here you can save it as a preset, and there are 500 locations. So with all of the plugins that you've installed, with all of the crazy things that you do with them, and once again, we're not even talking about the effects yet. That's coming a little later in a moment. So the final engine, but not the last engine that we have, it's actually been released just a month ago. It's called Dense, and it's kind of initially it was a very strange idea because we've done very crazy stuff, like you've just heard, like Groove. It's like a bass and drum machine with these very playful sounds. We had Node, which kind of makes sense. It's a very efficient engine to get these classic FM sounds. Odds, which I've just shown, which focuses on performance. And then Dense is just 4 virtual analog oscillators. So, okay, why? But the reason we did it is that it's not just a simple layer of 4 oscillators. You've probably seen a lot of manufacturers are introducing the so-called vintage mode into their instruments. So it's basically very slow randomization of oscillator pitch and maybe other parameters. Here we kind of took this concept to a bit of an extreme because we have randomization. We have 4 oscillators. Then there are 4 modulation generators which make the pitch drift. If I show you with an initialized patch, you will hear what it means. So it kind of sounds like the JP1000 Super Saw, although it's not 7 waveforms, it's just 4. Wow, that's a rhyme. So the shape is the detune. The shape knob is the detune. But if we use shift and shape, that's not the detune. That's modulation depth from the random generators. So it's gonna, these oscillators are kind of fluctuating. It's gonna be like this wavy. And another thing is, there's a way to randomize the pitch on every key press. So if I press the same, key, it can get pretty crazy. With a single note, it can go extreme, not with a chord though. But you just dial in the right amount, and it has this very interesting pitch wobble effect. It's basically the same thing you have in old polyphonic analog synths, where you have you have voice cards. So they are groups of oscillators per polyphonic voice, and those are calibrated differently. So basically, it makes this new analog synthesizer sound like a very, very old analog synthesizer. However, so far the example is just, I'm showing the concept of it, but we have 4 oscillators, and we have 50 different variations of how these oscillators are set up. Different octave detunings, different waveforms, as well as ring modulation and bit depth reduction. So in the end, for instance, this waveform is using 2 pairs of square waveforms with ring modulation. Which is a very kind of elastic sounding thing. Yeah, it's really, really nice. And if we go to set the random pitch, it's kind of especially when layered with something that doesn't go out of tune, it makes a big difference. So, yeah. Again, you can dial in a very subtle amount of this, or you can go very wild. You know, especially during when you want to. So essentially, pitch is another way to express an idea when it goes like wild suddenly. So yeah, so I've shown you a few oscillators. Now we can go to showing you the effects. We have quite a few available. I'm going to try to show you very quickly some of the coolest effects that we have. The more recent ones. Just a sec, sorry. One of the effects is called stator. So what it does, it's modeling tape wobble. So there are several generators that model like wow and flutter, as well as very like high-pitched, high-frequency pitch modulation in the tape. And it's also modeling crosstalk. So it slightly blends the left and the right channels. So it has this kind of a flanging effect that's very, very subtle, but you can sense it essentially. So that's the dry sound. And now with stator. Again, what's incredible is that all of this stuff all of the settings and everything, the plugin types, they are saved in the presets. So no matter what kind of stuff you have in here, essentially, if you bought this instrument 4 years ago, and you see all of the manufacturers releasing, oh, this new synth, it has these type of oscillators, these types of effects. Like, oh, I want that one. You could be just sitting with this. I just buy the plugins and expand what's in here. Oh, tape wobble is now very popular. You don't have to do anything. You can just buy a plugin to do it here. Some other effect becomes the thing with some manufacturers. There's a chance that it would also be available here, so you can save money. Yeah, there's another one that we have that's called DCM8, which is short for decimate, which does sample rate and bit depth reduction. very cool stuff. We have another one called Corrosion, which in the first version, it's a multi-algorithm distortion algorithm. Multi-algorithm distortion effect. It used to have 5 algorithms, now it has 10 in the latest version. So let me show you. That's the dry sound. So it's almost like sending this instrument through a distortion pedal, but you don't need the distortion pedal. You have it here. You can save it as a preset, load it anytime. Yeah, another example. That's the raw sound, nothing in it. Some of the distortion algorithms are very extreme, more like wave shaping actually. Again, I mean, the array of different, I would say, it's almost like you're switching personalities with this instrument, I would say. That's the most exciting part, is that one instrument can sound very, very warm, very, you know, what we associate with the analog warmth, very kind of rounded, soft sound. But it can go really wild into FM territory with kind of cold and harsh sounds, or it can be both at the same time within a single preset. So I think that's something that's really interesting. Another plugin we have is very cool. It's called Rerun. So what it's doing is it's basically like a repeater, so it records audio, repeats it for a certain amount of time, then it plays it. It's recording, repeating, all the same, all the time. And you can adjust the size of these recordings. And how many times, it's kind of randomized, so the time is still randomized, the repeats are randomized, but you can set the range of these randomizations. So actually, some people find it very annoying to listen to this one. But it's one of our most popular plugins, which is very interesting. There are many people that like to be annoyed. That's what I'm saying. It's actually very cool on these kind of sweeps, because these sweeps are kind of frozen in time. So, again, completely different territory than what we've heard in the past, with the other plugins. Another very cool one is called Albedo, which is also a very popular product that we have, one of the best-selling effects. It's a granular reverb. So it's recording the sound into a buffer, and from this buffer it's playing 16 grains So basically 16 copies of the signal, but in a different points in time. And you can kind of hear its granular character over here. But what's cool about it is you can set the grain time, but you can also freeze it. And then when it freezes the algorithm, it stops recording into the buffer. So you can kind of perform on top of it, and actually you can I've just muted the digital oscillator, which was used for the recording. And I'm using the analog oscillators and the filter. Now it's the other way around. I've frozen the analog sound and I'm playing the digital one on top. Yeah, so that's pretty awesome stuff. Again, not just like a performance thing, but very practical thing in the studio as well, I think. Especially for people who have problems looking at the screen all the time. These instruments are a very good way to stay away from the screen, but not lose all of the crazy stuff that you get with plugins. Of course, it's not as powerful as the desktop plugins, but these little building blocks can be combined over here. So we were kind of looking at them one by one, but if you put all of this stuff together, I think it's really amazing. Thank you very much for coming here. I appreciate your attention. I appreciate your patience. Yeah.